Welcome. I'm so excited to see you all today. We've got a lot to work with today, so I'm just going to get right to it because I planned us down to the minute. Can everyone see my screen okay? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. Welcome. This workshop is called Community Partnerships, Building an Audience by Building Together. Hopefully you're at the right place. This is a jam-packed hour-and-a-half workshop. What I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about my background. Why should you be listening to me to talk about community workshops, partnerships, tell you what to expect in our two-part series, my format and philosophy on how I'm going to go about this, and then we'll get the workshop started. My name is Susan Lieu. I am a Vietnamese-American performer, playwright, and producer based in Seattle from the Bay Area, Santa Rosa, California. And about 3 years ago, I decided to become a full-time artist. And I wrote a solo show called 140 Pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother, launched that in 2019, took it on a 10-city nationwide tour. And I would say the #1 reason why that tour did well and that I was in the black after that tour was because of community partnerships. They were the ones that were the amplifying mouthpiece that I couldn't be when I went to cities that I didn't know anybody. So I love them for that. And I'm going to talk about how community partners are not just justice background. So I did a bit of international development work in Vietnam, Zambia, Cuba, and India. So I'm very much well versed in the nonprofit space and understand their constraints and their desires. And I'm also an entrepreneur. I have a chocolate company called Sokola Chocolatier with my sister in San Francisco, California. So for me, I also understand the hustle life of being an artist, and we've got minimal resources and we're always throwing things against the wall to see what works. And finally, I have an MBA from Yale, and I got that in 2014 and specialized in marketing. All right, we've got a two-part series here. Today, we're gonna go through a couple of things. You know, what are the keywords of the work that you're trying to do? Who should you be working with in terms of other organizations? What kind of assets do you have that would be worthwhile and interesting to other folks? And then, oh my God, I don't have a lot of time. What's worth my time? What should I say yes and no to? In next week's course, also on Tuesday, we're gonna start talking about negotiations, money, contracts, all the things that often artists are like, yeah, I mean, sure, that sounds great. You know, like, no, let's really talk about it and try to figure out, it's not about more for me and less for you. It's about more for everyone. And I'm very, very excited about that module. I will talk about streamlining marketing because once you do a lot of these partnerships, they're asking for the same things. So have you managed your own sanity to make sure that you can give them the resources when they want so they can promote you and you can maximize your time doing your creative work. I'm going to be talking about networking, and I know people can feel uncomfortable about that. And I think that LinkedIn actually is a very powerful tool about it, and I'll explain why. And finally, we'll have open Q&A because that's a lot of content. Okay, cool. So how are we going to do all this? Oh my God, was that ominous or what? No, it's painter's tape. How are we going to do all of this? 140 Pounds, my show, is the case study that we're going to be working on. I sold out a number of shows across the country, also with all my premieres in Seattle, and I'll continually go back to, this is what I figured out along the way. I am not an expert. I've been a full-time artist for just 3 years. You know, a number of you have a lot more experience than me. I'm just going to say, for my situation, this is what works. Please find whatever works for you and leave the rest at the door. How we're going to do this is, I don't think a lot of these exercises are like so like novel and insane and a book should be written about it. I think what this workshop offers is the time and space for you to think about it. Because oftentimes we're always doing trade-offs. Be there for our full-time job, our family, other people, our art. And then this is the non-fun stuff of the art, right? This is not truly the creative work that you signed up, that you wanted to dedicate your life to, but to allow the time and space to do that and the permission for you to like, it's okay to do this. It's okay that I haven't thought about it. That's really what's, I think, part of the gift of this workshop. We'll be using time for peer feedback. So sometimes you'll be in one-on-one sessions with one other folks or like in a group setting to kind of generate more ideas. And so be open to that, because I know it can be intimidating to connect with people virtually if you haven't before, but that's okay. I haven't connected with you before, but I'm happy to expose my life to you. Okay, the power of a timer. I'm going to be like, okay, we're going to start, we're going to stop. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And it might be frustrating to you. You might be like, I just got on a roll, Susan. Or like, why don't we just do this later? Or I can do it later. And it's like, actually, I'm creating containers for you. And it's a forcing function for you to get something on the paper so that you can move forward. Work in progress. There's always next week. We can have time for doing homework. And we will also check in next week as well. Okay. That's the format and philosophy on the workshop. Okay, timing itself. What are we doing today, Susan? How are we going to accomplish all these amazing things? I will tell you. First, we're going to talk about keywords, 35 minutes, then organizations, brainstorming those for 25, talking about your assets for 20, and then if we have time, which I'm not sure, level of effort to return on investment and how we make those decisions. So just think about it in chunks. It's a third, a third, a third. All right, here we go. Now, you might be thinking, wait, but Susan, what is your definition of community partnerships? They are mutually beneficial relationships that hold, uplift, and grow your art and their audiences. Oftentimes, it may feel that when you're asking somebody for something, you're taking away something from them. It's a burden. I don't want to bother you. I'm so sorry, right? But I want to shift that thinking just for this workshop, you know, and like roll with me on this, because I think this always feeling like asking or putting ourselves out there, it's just like, it feels with so much, it's like so much anxiety for me. I still to this day get constantly overwhelmed asking people if they want to work with me, because I just assume that I'm bothering them. And I want to challenge us in our thinking that what we're doing with community partnerships is that we're actually helping them too. The reason why that they have been organized as an organization, we are supporting their audiences too, and we're adding to their programming. So I want to shift in that thinking. Okay. Reason for being, raison d'être. Okay. So have you ever had this situation where you're like, oh yeah, I'm an artist, and someone comes up to you and you're like, oh, what's your art about? And then all of a sudden it just feels like, you're like, oh my God. It like feels so existential. You're like, what is my art about? Or like, what are the major themes? Like, so many times when I first started on this, I was like, well, it's kind of like this, and it's like that, and it's like that. And then it's like 2 minutes later, like people are like, too long, didn't read. And it's quite embarrassing, right? Because you will only get these like kind of small windows of time to pitch. And if they're not engaged, they're kind of going to move on or change the topic, or you're not going to get that meeting that you wanted. So how do we become more confident and comfortable in that? And I think to do that, we want to keep in mind with this question: who's your work for? And what are the core themes? And if you can answer those questions, who you should partner with will come with ease. All right. Wait, no, it's okay. All right. So in doing that, let's talk about 140 pounds. Okay. So this is the show description of when you buy tickets to my show. This is what it says. 2 hours into surgery, Susan's mother loses oxygen to her brain, and the plastic surgeon deliberately does not call 911 for 14 minutes. 5 days later, while in a coma, she flatlines. The surgeon is charged with medical negligence, and her family falls apart. No one talks about what happened. 19 years later, on her wedding day, Susan's mother's seat sits empty, and Susan realizes she can no longer ignore what she's always wanted: to know who her mother was. Sifting through thousands of deposition pages and reaching out to the killer's family, Susan uncovers the painful truth of her mother, herself, and the impossible idea of Vietnamese feminine beauty. I worked on that show description for so long, and I tell you, mine was like totally garbage until my director helped me write it. It was like sometimes other people outside of me can see things in a different way, but then she was quite succinct in it, right? Okay, so that was the 2019 version of my show. The 2018 version of my show, and I bring this up for a specific reason. These are the themes. So once you know what the core of what the piece is, here are the themes. Okay, multi-generational immigrant experience, because we're Vietnamese-American. Body insecurity and shame, repression and subsequent examination of personal loss, and lack of accountability in the medical system. This 2018 version. I gotta tell you, when I first started my art, I was like so hot on the lack of accountability in the medical system. I was like, we're going to change laws. Everyone's going to like look up the background of their doctor. I'm going to have certain organizations table on my shows. And guess what? That was such a specific sliver of an audience. And like, I didn't see people gravitating to that at the end of the show. They were gravitating to all the other themes. So I show you the accountability one, that bullet point, to let you know that like themes can change over time. And you can kind of see what resonates with different people by you workshopping your shows or talking to more fans and things like that. But I guess I just want to put it out there to let you know that things can ebb and flow, right? Like, just because you believe it, and I will do activist work on that later in my life, but you write down all the things that you think it is, and it's okay. You will get more feedback from other people, and this will shift what your bullet point list is. Okay, so you're thinking, okay, cool, Susan, I get what your show is about. Why does this matter to me? It matters to you because now the question is like, okay, well, what are your bucket of keywords? Where can I kind of plop you really nicely so I can kind of figure out what organizations to look up? Okay, so the first bucket is like outsider identity stuff. So I'm Asian, I'm Vietnamese-American, I'm an immigrant, I'm a child of refugees. Like, I think identity issues, that's one thing what my art is about. The second thing is I would put it into the mind category, mental health, like what do you do and not do with grief, intergenerational trauma. I've seen fans like really gravitate towards that. And so I've kind of been upping it more in my work because I see that's what they're hungry for. Because that's not why I initially did the show, right? I did it for my own reasons. But then over time, I realized I was looking so personally within about my own story. I couldn't really see what the universal story was going on because I was so insular about it. But that was interesting. And that's how we make it a little bit more universal. Third one, body. Okay, my mom died from plastic surgery. So there's beauty standards, body image, body positivity, and body shame, which I explore a lot in the show. Okay, that's like the body category. And the last one's death, grief, loss, death, trauma, and healing. Okay, that's what my show is. Now I'm curious, can you like give me a thumbs up if you have like, if you have your whole list like this? Like, how clear do you feel? Like, do you have something like this or not? Thumbs up if you do, thumbs down if you don't. Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs down. Lots of thumbs down, some sideways, lots of sideways. Okay, great. One opportunity to do this today. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna set the timer for 10 minutes. And in your worksheet, on page 1 is my example that I just showed you. Page 2 is your turn. Your turn. You're gonna put your project name, and you're gonna, if you can do this on the computer or handwritten, write down if you have your art or show description. It could be your organization, it can be an installation that you're working on. What's the description? What are the through lines? And what are the keywords? I'm gonna set the timer for 10 minutes to do this, and I will be available in the chat to answer your questions. Does that sound all right? Okay, go for it. All right, so now that we've talked about that, I kind of did this thing where I'm like, okay, so there's this like Venn diagram. And if you so happen to have 4 buckets, 4 keywords, that's great. If you have 3 keywords, okay. But on your worksheet, there's this like Venn diagram here. And I want you to put each of your keywords under keyword 1, keyword 2, 3, 4, right? And each one is a bucket. And what I want you to be able to do is start to populate that Venn diagram. Now, the way Venn diagrams work that we all know is that when there's an intersection of something, something different goes in that overlap, right? So in terms of my example with identity, outsider, and the mind and mental health, the intersection there is intergenerational trauma, okay? Or between keyword 2 and 3 with mind and body, we've got a lot around mental health and a lot around body image, but what's the intersection there? It's beauty standards and body shaming and perfectionism. Do you see what I'm saying? So here, what my next task for you is I want to understand what's your niche market that you're going to address. Where is there overlap where you can get a highly engaged audience? And that's what I call the golden lotus, the thing that is in the blue. Everything, all the things in the blue is the golden lotus. So now I want you to do is I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes. And I want you to think back to your 4 keyword buckets. And like I said, if you're like, Susan, I'm at 30% and this is not any easier, we're just going to pretend that what you did is truth for now. It's not final, but we're just going to accept it as truth for now. And I want you to humor me with this exercise where you then put them into the Venn diagrams and start to see where is the overlap and is there anything that is in all 4 circles if you have 4 keywords, which I call the meat of the matter, which is the veggie meat of the matter, because that is maybe what your art does to help really catapult you and your audiences. Okay, so I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes. You can pop in the chat if you're having any questions and I can get to them. All right. All right. I know it's like, oh, I'm feeling so rushed right now. Like, this isn't fair, Susan. But what it is progress from when you started this at 2:30. That's all it is, you know, and I just want you to recognize like, okay, I'm putting it out there. I'm starting to massage the content. It's kind of like, I'm starting to see where this is shaking out. Maybe it won't be in the final position. You are going to have a whole week between now and the next workshop, if you choose to return, to think about it, you know, and things will kind of suss out and you can bring questions back. Now that we've started to kind of dabble in our keywords, well, the question is, okay, Susan, I've got my keywords, like, who are my partners? Like, where's this going? Great question. That's why we're going to be brainstorming organizations. Now, remember when I went back to that like vulnerable part of me where I was like, I don't like asking people for stuff because I feel like that I'm burdening them somehow and I'm bothering them. Well, remember, working with organizations and it's just, there's no burden. Their reason for being, their mission for being is also, it lives with your art and you are going to serve them. So remember that you're a value add to them. It's going with that energy. Okay, so you're on a grant application and there comes that dreaded question. So who are your community partners? How are you working with community organizations? And you're just like, yeah, who am I working with? And it feels like such a big empty space. Like, is that all I got? You know, or like, how do I make myself look really good? And I know that someone had sent in a question to Artist Trust earlier saying like, how do I become competitive for grant applications? Right? Like, how do I know I'm partnering with the right people? And I think those are really fair questions. And we're also figuring it out as we go, right? So when we want to think about partners, instead of just community-based organizations and nonprofits, I want to challenge you to think about all sectors: private sector, public, which includes nonprofits, and government, which I would say is kind of like a different space. I want you to think about organizations that are small, medium-sized, and large. Yes, corporations. Yes, large national organizations. Big. I want you to think about all blueprints. Things that have physical spaces, like Artist Trust has a physical office. Things that are just digital. Maybe I'm in a Facebook group called Korean Mommies because my son is half Korean, right? But I'm there, and I would call that an interesting digital space. Informal, maybe it was like a grassroots organization that started, but they don't have 501c3 status. Maybe it is very formal, and it's a cultural institution in the international district, and they've been there for like 20 years. And of course, they're a clear partner. So that's what I want you to think about with partners. They're not just community organizations. In fact, I think theaters are community partners. I think for-profit corporations that have maybe employee affinity groups for women or for Asian people or for Black people, you know, or for the arts. Those are all valid things to think about. So what I did here, because I was trying to work backwards, I was like, how did I figure out who to partner with for the tour? And so what I did is I had those 4 buckets of my keywords. I put them all on the left column on keywords, and you can look at your worksheet for this on page 3 is my example, but for you is going to be page 4. Left side is keywords that you're going to plop in. And then on the top, you're going to think about what's really local to me in my city, what's regional. So maybe that's my county or my state, or, you know, Pacific Northwest, like a region in the United States or whatever country you're tuning in from. And then national, what has a really, really big reach? And what I want you to think about when looking at my square is it's actually quite skewed heavy on the Asian row, if you'll see that. I have a lot of partners there. They're very activated. They're very interested. And anything that I put with a star is, you know, folks that I have a warm lead there. I have a relationship there. But if you look in the second row of health and trauma, mental health and trauma, it's a little light. Same thing with body, beauty, and women, a little light. And then death and grief and loss, it's like there's some smatterings here and there, but like there's more opportunity. And one thing I do for keyword 5, when you're like, whoa, Susan, what's keyword 5? Is there's a group that I'm going to put in as past supporters. They might not neatly fit here, but I would say people who have past funded you. If there have been any press publications that have written a story about you, I'd put it in there, you know, and I, you know, just there's other people who might not fit neatly into these categories, and just kind of plop them in there in row 5, because they might not be an explicit partner, but they can be an indirect partner for other reasons. Okay, do we have any questions before y'all just start filling out your table here? We can just ask it out loud. All good? Okay, I'm gonna set the timer for 5 minutes. Let's do 5 minutes, individual working session. Next steps. I want you to remember something in this overwhelm. I want you to remember the original definition of what community partnerships are. They're mutually beneficial relationships that hold, uplift, and grow your art. You're serving their audience, and you're also serving your work as an artist, okay? So that's where we're going. And that's where we're going to continue to go. Now, ignore my first line here. But what I want you to do in terms of home play, of thinking about what can I do that's going to be kind of productive before next Tuesday. We had 2 exercises we did. The Golden Lotus veggie meat one, and also the brainstorming orgs. I want you between now and next Tuesday to give yourself the space of at least, I'm going to challenge you and actually say 3 25-minute sessions. I work on the Pomodoro method, right? I set the timer for 25 minutes. I say what my goal is going to be. And if you can go co-work with a friend, even better. I'm going to redo the veggie meat part. I'm going to just try it again. 25 minutes. You do the 25 minutes. You give yourself a 5-minute break, also timed. You come back, 25, 5, 25, 5. If you can find a good hour-and-a-half chunk to give yourself this grace of deepening your understanding of what your work is and how you can share that with the world, I think that's fantastic. Okay, so you can do at least 1 25-minute session, but I would want you to do 3 rounds. And especially if something was really hard and really frustrating, I really want you to start with that first, you know? Okay, we're gonna have a session next Tuesday, same time. Bring your questions there. We'll start with some Q&A. Okay, cool. We have 4 minutes left. Let's do some open Q&A right now. Go for it. Popcorn style.
Will I be able to rectify some of the problems that I created by talking too much? I just want to make sure that, Paul gets to go a little bit further in his portion of our little breakout.
Oh, I see. Can you privately message your partner and then, and you can bring him in, Marvin. Can you privately message your partner and get their email address so that y'all can set up a session to meet each other?
I'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, great. What else? Yeah, I'm joined by my coworker here, Art. Hello, Art. You've been on a lot of meetings. Yeah, these are all real people in these boxes. Yeah. Oh, let's see.
I have a question.
Go for it.
So with theaters, you usually like rent out the whole theater and keep all ticket sales, or is it always different depending on the theater?
Always a different scenario depending on it. Hey, is this a festival setup? Do they really want me to come as a special guest and then they're going to front some money? Usually the ticket share is when I'm not going to throw down the money for rental, right? Or there's like a mixed setup where we're doing a trade-off around risk. So yeah, it varies. It really varies from place to place. I will eventually, I think, be doing a workshop on putting on a national tour because I've been getting a lot of questions like that. So hopefully, if you're interested, let me know that.
Yes, yay.
Okay, great. Let's see, we got 2 minutes left. Aaron, did you see, is that a question?
No, it's not.
Oh, just thoughts. Okay, great. Any other questions? But yeah, Christina, sorry, I can't be more specific here on a granular level. I want to stick to like the community partnerships part, but eventually I will do a national touring workshop, I think. Any other questions, folks? No? You're all good? Oh, wait, Wiley.
Who did the illustration on your poster?
Hey, Francesca, this is Stacey Nguyen. She's a wonderful artist in Seattle, and she's Vietnamese-American. She does a lot of my stuff. Wiley, back to your question, and then we'll wrap.
As far as developing relationships with community partners, is it how far along in your process do you need to be before you either are you like would you cold call a community partner? Do you have are you completely like finished and ready for funding? Like, where are you in the process?
Sorry, our childcare timing didn't really work out. That's a really great question. You know, it really happens organically, you know, like my shows were in iteration, right? Like I had workshopped 3 installments before I got to the world premiere of 140 Pounds. And, you know, at first, like people came as friends. And then at one point they're like, hey, you should get in touch with this organization. They really like it. Or maybe someone who works there went to the next one or something like that. It would come organically. Sometimes I would cold call, but see that goes to session 2 about LinkedIn, right? Because like maybe then I've identified those organizations in that table. How am I going to get to them? Yes, it's great if I know someone there, but what if I don't? How do I get it if they're a 2nd or 3rd degree connection? Oh, I know what you want. You want a highlighter. You like these. So there's going to be the aggressive approach and then the passive approach on it, right? Or like you already have, it's either inbound or outbound marketing, right? Like stuff people are approaching you and stuff you got to go hunt yourself. And so what I want to do with one of the exercises on level of engagement, level of effort, return on investment, right? You're going to start to figure out like, wait, the world is my oyster. Oh my God, there's like so many people I could partner with. Now who would I partner with, right? And I created a rubric there for you just to start putting numbers down and then assessing like, okay, maybe we'll take on 2 partnerships that are super easy and fun. And I already have the program, they have a program idea and they have staff that are going to help me with it. And then, so it's less effort and I'm going to learn a lot from that partnership. And then that will help inform my future partnerships. And then this one, oh my God, that would be a dream partnership. I remember one place I really wanted them to be a sponsor of my show. And I remember I reached out to these folks and the executives there that I thought were the decision makers. And it was a 6-month process. And it was a Hail Mary effort that came at the last minute. It was so crazy. And I'll talk about that next session. But actually, you know, I love that we're doing, I'm so sorry, he's a baby. I think I learned a lot during this session that people have a lot of questions and that the place to like bounce off ideas and really process is really important. So for next session, I'll incorporate more processing time and more open Q&A time, because I think the type of granular questions that you're asking, I didn't account for that in terms of figuring out like, that's what we also need to talk about. So I appreciate your question. And I can't wait to look forward to them next week. Please do your home play, set timers for yourself. You're worth it. And I will see you all next week. All right? Okay. Bye, friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you.